A pleasant morning to everyone. Good morning. We will be dealing with the third part of the series entitled Christmas Through the Centuries. During the first Sunday of the month, we talk about Christmas from the eyes of Moses. And then last Sunday, we talk about Christmas from the eyes of Isaiah. And today, we will be looking at Christmas from the eyes of Micah. And last month, we were in Bethlehem. That photo in front of you, I captured that myself. That's a side portion of the Nativity Church. It's the place where Jesus was believed to have born. He was given birth in that particular place by his mom. And when we were there, I was really fascinated of the place. It wasn't anymore the same as how it was in the biblical times, because if you would go outside of the Nativity Church compound, it's a well-improved city already. There's a lot of cars around. There's a lot of building that you could see. So it's entirely different now. And while we were entering Bethlehem, it was a city that was fenced because it's no longer under the authority of Israel. It was entrusted to the Palestinian Authority because that's what they have been wanting. When we were entering, we were led by a tour guide who was an Arab. And he gave a statement that to me was very stunning, because when we entered the city of Bethlehem, he said, "Do you see these things around?" And he said, "There are no beautiful places in Bethlehem. But you can see all of these people. Thousands of tourists, pilgrims that are there." And he said, these people are here not because there are scenic view here in Bethlehem. They are not here because of magnificent buildings built by the occupants here. People are not here because of a good behavior that the individuals staying within the city are exemplifying extraordinary character. But he said, millions of people come here every year only because this place is believed to be a sacred place. Because this place is believed to be the birthplace of Jesus. And he said, tourism is the number one thing that brings up the economy within Bethlehem. If not for Jesus, Bethlehem will not experience the kind of economy that it has today, if not for Jesus. And these words came from the very mouth of an Arab. Think about it. This place can be a place that is still insignificant even in our time. Yet it became significant because the Savior was born in that particular place. Many years ago, after Isaiah prophesied at the southern kingdom, his successor was Micah. We seldomly hear teachings or preachings from the book of Micah because it's just a short writings, and he's not really that popular a prophet as he is. Now let's look at what he wrote here, because if you look at the background of the prophecy that we are going to discuss, Isaiah prophesied at the southern kingdom. Maybe at a little background of those who came here for the first time. There was a time that Israel was just one kingdom. During the time of King Saul, King David, and King Solomon. But after the reign of King Solomon, the kingdom was divided into two, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. The north was composed of the 9 tribes of Israel and some Levites with them. And then the south was composed of the tribes of Benjamin and Judah and some Levites with them. So the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. Now Isaiah prophesied for the southern kingdom in many occasions. Micah succeeded Isaiah and continued prophesying at the southern kingdom. So take note of that. When Isaiah last week, when we discussed about the text that he wrote, The king back then was Ahaz. And then this time, during the time of Micah, especially at the end part of his prophetic ministry, he prophesied during the time of Hezekiah. Remember last week I mentioned to you that Ahaz had a secret alliance with the Assyrians. Okay? So I hope you would remember that the Assyrians were powerful people back then. And then even if they betrayed the southern kingdom later, there were times that they sent money and wealth to Jerusalem. So Jerusalem was experiencing material blessings coming from the Assyrians because they were sending wealth from time to time to Jerusalem. The people in Jerusalem were blinded by the wealth that they were experiencing. This is really a high possibility. Places that are really so improved economically, people who have much money, if they are not careful enough, there is a high tendency for them to drift away from God and even abandon their faith. I mentioned to you several times experiences of things like this. Remember when I told you, once it was Dr. Ben De Jesus who shared it with us, that he visited Australia. And he was so sad to see that there were churches that were closed and turned to be bodega already. Some are stores. Some are functioning in a different way, no longer a religious building. And he asked the question, why does this thing happen? So they went to the new generation and asked them. One of the things that came out as a reason is that we have houses, we have cars, we have our own yachts, some of us even have our own planes. Who is God that we would need Him? In so much abundance, there is a high possibility that there is going to be a drift away from the faith, from the belief and the embrace of what is supposedly dependence on God, a life that is depending on the Lord. The southern kingdom, while they were lavish with some wealth back then, the people inside the city of Jerusalem started to develop this kind of problem. They felt they were self-sufficient. They started engaging in the problem of social elitism. They started looking down at others who were poor, who were in a depressed condition. Isaiah prophesied in those kinds of people, especially the leaders. He prophesied inside the city of Jerusalem. But Micah, he prophesied among the people in the outskirts. He prophesied among those individuals who felt that they are betrayed by their leaders. He prophesied among those individuals whom they thought that we have nothing more in our hands. There is nothing else out there. There is no one that we could depend on. They are people who are in a depressed condition. They were the poorest of the poor. They were individuals whom we could consider as less fortunate in our time. Those were the people that Micah prophesied to. And here is the prophecy of the prophet. If you look at Micah chapter 5, verses 2 to 5, here is what he said. But as for you, Bethlehem Ephratah, too little to be among the clans of Judah, from you one will go forth for me to be ruler in Israel. His goings forth are from long ago, from the days of eternity. Therefore, he will give them up until the time when she who is in labor has borne a child. Then the remainder of his brethren will return to the sons of Israel, and he will arise and shepherd his flock in the strength of the Lord, in the majesty of his name of the Lord his God. And they will remain, because at that time he will be great to the ends of the earth. This one will be our peace. When the Assyrian invades our land, when he tramples on our citadels, then we will rise against him 7 shepherds and 8 leaders of men. May the good Lord bless the reading of his word. If this passage, this prophecy, is uttered before the people who are inside Jerusalem. If this prophetic utterance was mentioned among the elites, among those people who have been given authority, probably it wouldn't have a much effect in their lives. But Micah lived among the outskirts. He lived among the people who were in the slum. He lived among those individuals who felt that they were oppressed. They were in a depressed condition. He lived among those individuals who cannot hope anymore for their leaders to rescue them because they felt that they are forgotten. He lived among those individuals who cannot look up to their leaders because their leaders have been committing wrong decisions, that those decisions had affected so much their economic status. They were so affected, and they could no longer look around for help. There is no one that they could look up to. Micah was sent by God. So take note. Don't think that God forgot the elites. Don't think that God forgot the rich. Don't think that God forgot those who are in authority. No. God sent someone to them, and it was Isaiah in the earlier part of the story. Isaiah preached before them. Isaiah reminded them. Isaiah prophesied before them. But God, if He does not forget those who are in authority, if He does not forget those who are rich, God would certainly never forget the poor. God will never forget the marginalized. He will always remember those who are struggling. He will always remember those who are feeling depressed. He will always remember those who are having a hard time in life, especially the poor and the widow and the orphans. They are close to the heart of God. No wonder the ministry of the early church, if you look at the book of Acts, the church was used by God as an institution to address the need of those who are widow and of those who are orphans in Jerusalem in particular. So God never forgot those who are less fortunate. And this time, as they were living in that moment of a political instability, while they could no longer trust their leaders, while they were there feeling so bad that when they wake up in the morning, it's hard for them to rise up because there is no hope for the day. They wake up and it's the same thing. They sleep during the night and expect to wake up the following day without expecting something new anymore. That was the condition of those people living outside Jerusalem. Bethlehem is outside Jerusalem. Bethlehem was not a significant place. If you look at the passage, look at verse 2. How did Micah describe it? He said, "Too little to be among the clans of Judah." Why would the leaders give attention to this little town of Bethlehem? It's insignificant. If you want to be strategic as a political leader, you go to those areas that are improving. You go to those areas that you have people whom you can appoint to mobilize people who will actively participate with you. Bethlehem is no significant. That's why the leaders, they don't mind that place. That's why Micah said here, too little to be among the clans of Judah, that they could be noticed by the leaders. It's too little, too insignificant. And so the people living here were so much affected by this kind of condition, by this kind of mindset. And I believe we can easily relate with this. When sometimes we feel, will this be my life forever, Lord? That you just do the same thing over and over. And as if I am going to evaluate myself, Lord, I am just the same last year. Economically. How much more this time, Lord, when the inflation is really taking a toll on me? My mom complained the other day when she bought a creamer. She was surprised when she reached the counter. She was charged 70 pesos plus just for a tiny box of a creamer. And while we were conversing, I asked her, how much was it last year? My wife said, maybe around 50. How much was it before the pandemic? Maybe around 40. In a matter of 3 to 4 years, from 40 plus to 70 plus. Prices of the commodities are rising up. You can feel that, regardless of your status. I had a conversation with a businesswoman selling pizzas, and she said, Pastor, I can't take jacking up my price for the consumers. Why? Sabi niya, hirap na hirap ang business. Sabi ko, bakit? Kailangan kong i-jack up yung price because the ingredients that I use to make my product are also very expensive already. Dagdagan mo pa ng akyat ng kuryente. Everyone is feeling the inflation. And sometimes you wake up in the morning and you do the same thing and you complain to the Lord, Lord, ingunani na lang bagyod ko. The people living outside Jerusalem felt that. And that feeling that nobody can help you anymore. And that feeling that your leaders can never sympathize with what you go through because you look at their lives, they're living in luxury. That was the kind of scenario that the people during the time of Micah experienced. But in the midst of that situation, God sent His prophet and uttered these prophetic words saying, "Too little to be among the clans of Judah is this city called Bethlehem. But from among you, one will go forth for me to be a ruler in Israel. He's going forth from long ago, from the days of eternity." This is someone that can relate exactly to the hearts and situations of the people living even in the outskirts. While he can relate even to the least and to the poorest among the poor, this leader is someone that you cannot belittle as well because he came from eternity. He is not bound by time, not limited by space, but he came from eternity. And he jumped off from eternity to live among humanity that he can rescue human beings like you and me. And when Micah uttered the prophecy, maybe this won't resonate so much to those people who are living in luxury back then. But he uttered the prophecy among those individuals who were experiencing the pain because their leaders were not giving attention to them, because their leaders are no longer addressing the needs that they have. And Micah said, "From among you, a ruler shall be born." What is its effect in the heart of a person who is going through pain? It would resonate because it would tell them someday a leader will come, and this leader will not only sympathize with what you feel, but he empathizes with you because he knows what it means to be poor. He knows what it means to be in a difficult times. He knows what it means to be betrayed. He knows what it means to be in a dire need. And no other than Jesus himself. Hundreds of years later, after Micah prophesied, a babe was born, not in a hospital. A babe was born, not in a house, not on a bed. A babe was born in a manger. And the manger was not made up of wood, with foam on top of it, with beddings. No, not my friend. The manger is made up of a carved stone. Savior was born in that lowly condition. You know what does that tell us? Even in the most difficult time that we have today, when we cry out to Him, we can be assured that He understands what we are going through. I cannot identify the pain that you have in your heart and mind today, the struggles that you go through, even in this Christmas season. but knowing that my God understands what I feel and what I go through, that gives me much reason to go on. He identified even with the least in the society. This reminds me of a story one time. A British statesman and a French financier. His name was, I forgot her name. I'll check it out here. I don't want to mention the name wrongly. His name was Cecil Rhodes. Cecil Rhodes was rich. And he was also a philanthropist, so he offered scholarship to many young students. One time, he invited a student, a young man, to dine with him in his house. The young man came from a distant place that he needed to take a train. But this young man was a poor guy. He wore his suit. He tried to clean it well, but he had to ride a train. He rode a train, but he cannot pay for the first class. So he had to ride on a carriage for those that would only pay for a lower price. When he arrived in the house of Cecil Rhodes, he noticed that his clothes, his suit, was already stained by some dirt. He cannot avoid because he was in a carriage that carried not classy individuals. When he arrived there, he noticed that the people were really wearing wonderful dresses, well-prepared suits for a special occasion. And he felt, parang nakakahiya naman dito. He looked for Cecil Rhodes because he thought of just asking permission to just leave because he feels he does not belong in that place. But he cannot find him. About 30 minutes later, Cecil Rhodes came out with an old shabby suit. When he saw him, he was surprised. And then the servant of Cecil Rhodes went to him and told him, "You are welcome here, my son." Because you know what, earlier, Cecil already prepared his suit. He was ready to entertain people. But when he saw you coming, he brought me back to his room and asked me to find his shabby suit so that he could wear it and you will not feel indifferent when you come in. You are welcome in this house. Jesus wore the human flesh so that you and I will not feel indifferent when He comes and welcomes you. Minsan, tayo pang mga tao ang mabilis manghusga. Ladagan lagi na siya tato. Hala ka na siya, oh. Ako na siya, oh. Sanina niya. Shorts lang. But God, He does not do that. He never does that. And it's so amazing that He can relate with the lowliest person on earth. Lastly, last na lang. Ayaw kabalaka, hapit na tamahuman. There was once an obnoxious college professor. During the first day of his class, he introduced himself to his students and told them that, "I am so-and-so. I finished this degree from this university. I got another degree from this university. I am a person who is so strict, and so you comply with me." He said many things about himself. After that introduction, he stood up and looked around him and asked something from his students that his students were really wondering why he asked that question. And the question was this: if any of you think you are stupid, stand up. So he looked around. Nobody stood up. But he wanted to ask again. So he said, "If any of you think you are stupid, stand up." He looked around. And he was surprised. There was one student at the back who stood up. And he called for his attention and said, "Boy, you really think you are stupid?" And the student said, "No, sir. I just don't like you to be alone." Because he was the only one standing after all. But in the midst of human stupidity, Jesus stood up for you and for me. That in this world, you will never feel alone. He can relate with you, even the deepest hurt that you have in life. That's the Savior we worship today. God bless you all, and have an advanced Merry Christmas to everyone.